One of the things, not the only, but one of the things that is evidence of God's fingerprints all over this Bible is that such a vast collection of writings over a period of approximately 1,400 years by about 40 different authors from a wide diversity of background and culture could form a singular, cohesive unit, telling one story from beginning to end, from Genesis, Revelation. What is that story? It's the story about how God has created and then redeemed a people for his presence through his son, Jesus Christ, and his atoning death and resurrection. And so presence, we're going to talk about presence. In the beginning of the Bible and the end of the Bible, we read about man dwelling in the place that God has created for him and enjoying the unhindered and unmediated presence of God. Unhindered meaning there's nothing disrupting man and God's presence. It's unmediated. Man does not need any kind of mediator, any kind of go-between between him and his creator. We see in Genesis, and then we see the same at the end in Revelation. But in between these two bookends, in between the first couple chapters in Genesis and then the end in Revelation, in between those two, we discover as we read the Bible, God's working through his presence to enable God's people to experience God's presence in spite of the problem of their sin. Presence is so important. There's a story about a father and his daughter who the father would read to his daughter every night at bedtime because his daughter could never sleep. She just couldn't sleep unless daddy would read her a bedtime story. She had to have her daddy read the story of the 3 little pigs so she could go to sleep at night. So because dad got tired, he came up with this ingenious plan. He thought, I know what I'll do. I'm tired at night. I will record myself reading the story, and I'll set her up with the recording, and I'll show her how to press play, and she can play this recording of me reading the story, and then she'll go to sleep. So she played it for a couple nights, but she still couldn't sleep, and she comes back to her daddy and says, Daddy, I can't sleep. I need you to read the story of the 3 little pigs to me. And the father says, well, honey, didn't I show you? Are you having trouble playing the tape I showed you? Is it not working for you? And she said this. She said, Daddy, no. She said, I know how to play it. I've been playing it. I can play the story, but I can't sit on its lap. I can't sit on its lap. What a beautiful story that reminds us of the importance of presence. In the tabernacle, the high priest filled that role until Jesus came, of being the partial provisional bridge between God and man. But Jesus is the perfect and permanent bridge. What the high priest could not do, and the high priest's sacrifice could not do on the Day of Atonement, is it could never remove the curtain. It never removed the curtain. The curtain was still there. He could go beyond it for that day, but he had to come back out again, and he had to do it year after year, and they had to bring the sacrifices day after day, and you needed a new high priest. When that high priest died, you needed another one over and over and over again. But because of Jesus, we don't need to bring sacrifices over and over and over again. What was partial and provisional is now permanent and perfect in our Savior, Jesus Christ. And then John goes on to write, he says, now because we have received and we have experienced the glory of Christ in our lives through faith, he says, now we receive, listen to this expression, we receive grace upon grace. Grace upon grace. It is grace on top of grace, on top of grace, on top of grace. It is grace piled high. Grace upon grace. And remember this, grace is not just the favor of God in bringing us acceptance and salvation. It is by grace that we are saved. It is by grace that we stand. It is by grace that we can move forward steadfast in the love of God and in the power of His Spirit.